This is a little wobbly to start with, but I want to do got a quick video. A couple of issues I wanted to bring up this morning. There we go. Maybe I can straighten this back up. First of all, as you can see, I'm wearing a pin here on my shirt. Some of the fellows from Knights of Columbus remind me when I'm out now that I should be wearing it. So I just came home from Mass and I put it on the shirt before I went there. Figured the collar's about the best place for it. I wanted to add a couple of other things. I've been in that organization for just a few days, and I don't have a schedule yet. As it turns out, there was a Knights of Columbus breakfast taking place in the parish hall today. Well, I had no idea. So I've got to figure out what we're doing and when we're doing it. As long as we're on the subject of faith, just quickly, I wanted to mention something that struck me last week. Pope Francis takes a lot of abuse because people say that he's trying to radically transform a church that doesn't transform very fast. But there was something he said a couple of weeks ago that I thought he may have been unfairly maligned about. He was talking and he said something along the lines of, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but that, we probably shouldn't all walk around wearing crucifixes around our necks. I have some of those and I have a scapular as well. And people said, well, wait a minute. Is he suddenly become anti-Christian? I don't think that's it. I think that we're reminded not to make a show of our religion. And I think what he's saying is a lot of people just throw these things around their neck for decoration. And he doesn't want anyone doing it just because, hey, look at me, look how good I am. If you're really sincere, I think that's a difference. And I don't think that's clear in his statement, or at least not in the reporting of his statement. So I wanted to get that out of the way very, very quickly here off the top. A couple of other things I wanted to talk about this morning, if I could very quickly, because people are going to say, hey, what happened to you? This is a little bit darker. I had a couple of women tell me over the last few weeks that I've gotten very, very gray. Actually, I've gotten very, very white on top of my head. This is a short-term experiment to see how this looks. I feel like I'm William Conrad in the old... there we go. We'll get this balance back in a minute. In the old Canon TV series, he had a great big thick black mustache. Either that or you might say, in some respects, that Magnum has really let himself go. So this is just a temporary thing. I wanted to see how it looked. I got some raised eyebrows at church today, though. Speaking of not making a show and not being vain, well, I missed the ball on that one, didn't I, by a big whiff. All right, that said, a couple of other quick things. I was reading a story this morning in the Toronto Sun, which is a very liberal newspaper. Toronto has a conservative paper called the Globe and Mail, and the Sun is the conservative or the liberal paper in that city. Why was I reading a Canadian newspaper? Some of you may have heard about the horrific accident that took place over the weekend where 14, and I believe the last number, it might be 15 now, players, coaches, and a broadcaster were killed en route to a hockey game. And I tuned in to watch some of the coverage on Canadian TV, including from the hockey broadcaster Don Cherry, who's a former player and a former coach. Very successful coach, I should point out. And he's perhaps, aside from the Prime Minister, the best known person in Canada. He's also a political conservative, even though he's a sports broadcaster, which means that he is terribly unpopular with a lot of people in his country who, well, like liberals here, would like to silence voices that they don't agree with. And Cherry last night, along with his broadcast partner, Ron McLean, they did a very, very wonderful tribute to all of these dead players, the dead coach, as well as the dead broadcaster. And it was very, very well done. And in the Toronto Sun, the liberal Toronto Sun, a writer says, the polarizing Don Cherry did a very nice job last night. It strikes me that the only way you can be polarizing is if you're a conservative. Liberals don't think that being liberal is polarizing. And then in the last week, the other big story that I think really underscores how bad this situation has gotten, where one side is really exercising its totalitarian tendencies. There's a writer by the name of Kevin Williamson. He is a brilliant, my computer making some noise here in the background. He is a brilliant, brilliant writer. He got hired by The Atlantic. They stole him away from the conservative National Review. and he got hired by the Atlantic. He wrote one very well done column last week, and then he got sacked. He got sacked because liberals complained about his hiring, because he has some very strong views. His mother gave him up for adoption when he was little instead of aborting him, and he has some very strong views because he lived. If you understand, he lived, and he has some strong views. But rather tongue-in-cheek a few years ago, he said perhaps women who have abortions should be put to death. There was a tongue-in-cheek reference, and even did a tongue-in-cheek interview, and this was common knowledge, but it's the excuse that his employer used to fire him after just a week on the job, saying, well, it will make pro-life women in the office uncomfortable. Well, what if you have people who are gay in the office? Do you have to fire all the Christians or Muslims because they may think it's... Well, let me put it this way. Most of us are very tolerant people. But because we believe in a book that has some strong things to say about that, does that mean we have to throw in the towel and never have a job again and go live under a bridge somewhere? You see how far this thing is going. And in fact, I believe that same argument is why I've lost a couple of jobs in the past, is because they were people in-house or advertisers or somebody who said, we don't like what that guy believes. Even though what I believe, I think I have a fairly strong foundation for what I believe in. But it shows you the times that we happen to be living in. I don't know anybody who's been canned because they're too dang liberal. Now, maybe Bill Maher. But even Bill Maher sometimes goes off the reservation and talks now and then like a conservative. But he even said the other night that he's against the proposed or potential boycott against Laura Ingraham. I guess it is an ongoing boycott. But he said, look, I've been a victim of this myself, and I think that this is a wrong-headed idea. And all she did was say something rather tart-tongued and tongue-in-cheek. And again, here we go. It's about time that we stood back and realized the people who are behind these efforts, it's not good enough to have a dialogue. When they say Don Cherry is polarizing, it's because he doesn't believe in a lot of the global warming hoo-ha. It's because he also has a rather strong view when it comes to using military force around the world against terrorism and against the enemies of the West. He doesn't always bring these up while he's actually speaking about hockey on the air, but if the subject comes up, he's not shy about expressing it. If you look at a guy like Bob Costas, who over the years has talked about gun confiscation and supports that, then why is he still working? How come nobody says Bob Costas is a polarizing figure? Because the people who say that, they only point to one side, and they think that what they believe is a self-evident truth, and that if you don't believe it, then there's something wrong with you. All right, gotta run. I just wanted to add a few of those things, and very quickly, I'm doing this from the home office. I had planned to sit down, which is why this video is doing this and this, but I planned, there we go. That's it. I'd planned to do this alongside the canyon this morning. It's a beautiful day out, and I wanted to use the canyon as a backdrop. But it's just a little too windy, and if you know, when you're doing this out in the wind, it's great. You get some beautiful pictures, but if you can't hear a dang thing other than just the wind, somewhat useless, isn't it? All right. Hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow morning on the radio, on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can go to the website and click the Listen Live button, hear us anywhere all over the world. Or if you've got a smartphone versus a dumb phone, you can now download the app, which means you can take us with you on the telephone anywhere you go. And I'm going to shut this down because it's wobbling even worse now. It's like my camera on my phone is starting to list the Titanic on my telephone. Good Lord.